Deshaun Watson make the Browns Super Bowl contenders?
Immediately. Deshaun Watson makes the Browns Super Bowl contenders, man. This was the biggest move the Browns could have made this offseason. Either Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers, but they got Deshaun Watson. Could not be bigger for the Cleveland Browns. As a Dog Pound or Cleveland Brown alumni, I was thrilled at the talent arriving in Cleveland. I was thrilled at the talent of Deshaun Watson, the football player arriving in Cleveland, because as a Browns fan, y'all understand, they understand how close they are to a Super Bowl. You have a running game, a running tandem that's the best in the National Football League. You have an offensive line, albeit you just lost a big domino piece at the center position. You have an offensive line that's good enough to get you there.
I heard.
You have a pass rusher, which in this day and age is just about all you need. You have a dominant pass rusher, Defensive Player of the Year candidate for the last 3 years, and he is on the cusp of getting his own in Myles Garrett that's good enough to get you there. You got a secondary with the shutdown type of cornerback in Denzel Ward that's good enough to hold things down in the back end. But you desperately needed a quarterback. And not only did you get a quarterback, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Then you got one of the best young quarterbacks in the National Football League.
Fresh.
If the Browns weren't Super Bowl contenders before, and we knew they were not because of their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, then you instantaneously become a Super Bowl contender when you take away the weakest link of the team in Baker and you instantly make that player, that position, the strongest link. What we've learned, whether it's studying the great Michael Jordan, studying the great Kobe Bryant, or study any great at anything they do, they always talk about this. Make your non-dominant trait, your non-dominant ability, your dominant ability. Jordan often talked about he wanted to make sure he worked his left hand so good that his left hand became nearly as good as his right. Kobe Bryant, we remember, I think he fractured his wrist. Marcellus, Wiley, correct me if I'm wrong. You knew the man better than I did. Kobe Bryant, I believe it was fracturing his right wrist, and all of a sudden he started working on his left for the duration of an offseason.
I heard about it.
The Cleveland Browns' weak link is a quarterback position. So if you can sit here and not only make your weak link better, but if you can make your weak link a strength, imagine how strong you have now become. So the Browns making their weak link at the quarterback position the strongest position on their team, I would say Myles Garrett, Deshaun Watson, the two most talented players on the Browns, and shortly thereafter you have Chubb. Now this Browns team is beyond legitimate.
Oh, that sounded beautiful. I missed you.
My dog.
I missed you. I mean, you're poetry in motion. You really are a poet. Fictional. I'm into drama, nonfiction. I lived through a snowfall. You know, I like the real stuff, but hey, it's okay. I take it poetic like you give it. No, he doesn't make them Super Bowl contenders. It's not about him. This is the problem. When you look at this trade, you see the money, you see the talent, you see Deshaun Watson to a ready-made roster, you think instant success. We have to preface everything by this. Which conference is he in? He's in the AFC, y'all. I'm going to play a little simple game before I get deep with y'all.
Please do.
Here's a simple game. Tell me which one of these quarterbacks is not making the playoffs next year. How many make it, Acho? Trivia number one.
7?
7. Yes, $200 to Acho. Okay, you want to do the $400 question? Name which quarterbacks are not going to make it to the postseason. Is Josh Allen going?
Yes, sir.
I would hope. Tua, Mac Jones, bubble. Matt Ryan and the Colts, I would say we too. Ding, 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 ding. Let's go to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens.
Sure, I would. I'd put him in there.
I don't like the eye roll, but I caught you. Okay, that's 3. Yes, Joe Burrow and the Bengals. He was just in the Super Bowl. That's 4. Uh-oh. I got a list still. Russell Wilson.
I put him in there.
You got to do that. 5. Oh, let's go to Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. I know you don't like Herbie, but that's 7 already. I haven't said Derek Carr yet, and I haven't even said Deshaun Watson yet. Here's the point. Even if you get in this year, you beat them once, and you beat the field once, and you get in. You're going to do it again? You're going to do it again? You have to continuously walk down Murderer's Row in that alley. The Cleveland Browns have to do this. Not just Deshaun Watson making up for a void at the quarterback position, this entire roster. That's a problem. And here's another problem. Let's go deeper. Deshaun Watson hasn't fully translated in the NFL just yet. There's a term out there that I actually don't really like, but it's called empty calories. That means you got your numbers in a football game, basketball game, and people's like, it didn't have impact. And Deshaun Watson had the highest passer rating of any quarterback in NFL history on a losing team. I don't know what picture they put next to empty calories, but that has to be it. You did the most. The best of you was the worst of y'all. So now he goes to a situation where obviously is dressed up great. You got a roster, you got a defense, you got a running game, you got all you need. Receiving core, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the point is you got what you need. Here's the problem. Does Deshaun actually translate enough for this team to get over the hump? And more importantly, does Kevin Stefanski know how to coach when it's a quarterback that's great? We saw him get the most out of a quarterback that had limits in Baker Mayfield. But when you get into this situation, as Brad Stevens in Boston, it's a little bit of a different animal when you talk about coaching this team in this conference.
You bring up a great point. Let me start with this. Deshaun Watson, empty calories. I got to dismantle that ideology.
Ooh, let's go.
We know if you really study not just the game of football, but if you study the statistics when it comes to the quarterback position, there's an inverse correlation between how well a quarterback plays statistically, aggregate number of yardage, and how well the team does. Let me hit you directly in your heart.
Don't slap me, though.
Justin Herbert. Second most passing yards last season. They didn't make the playoffs. We all recall the year that Jameis Winston threw for 5,000 yards. At the time, only 8 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL had thrown for 5,000 yards in a season. Dan Marino, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Matthew Stafford. Jameis Winston fell in line with that conversation of people. And they did not make the playoffs. They went 7-9. We know there's an indirect correlation between the yardage for a quarterback and team success because, as we all know, quarterbacks have to throw for more yards if their teams are behind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't subscribe to Deshaun Watson's empty calories. Now,
let's go.
You bring up a great point in regards to which of these quarterbacks ain't going to get in, y'all. But I had to take a step back after seeing all the musical chairs in the AFC and redefine my tiers in the AFC. The Chiefs used to be tier 1, right up there with the Bills. You got to remix that number because now I'm looking at my tiers like this. Tier 1, Bengals, Bills, period. Tier 2, Broncos. Russell Wilson's there now, y'all, so pump the brakes. Deshaun Watson and the Browns. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, they are now tier 2 to me. Keep in mind, without Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs never would have won that Super Bowl. 3rd and 15, wasp route, quick corner post, okay. Tier 2, I still got the Colts. Their defense is great. They've only missed a quarterback. They got a quarterback, MVP, formerly Matt Ryan. Now tier 3, I got a bunch of guys in there. I got the Dolphins. I think they make a huge leap. I got Marcellus Wiley's Chargers. I think Justin Herbert finds his way into the playoffs some way, somehow. As long as Belichick is there, the Patriots will be competitive. The Raiders, they still have Derek Carr, plus now you have his college teammate at receiver Devontae Adams. Then you got the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, I do think he will make some noise, but now the question is how much noise? And then last, you got your Tennessee Titans. As long as Derrick Henry is alive and available, the Tennessee Titans will be competitive. As long as the Browns can find themselves in that tier 2 region, and I think it would be very hard to argue that the Browns are not a tier 2 AFC team. As long as the Browns can find themselves in that tier 2 region, then they are Super Bowl contenders because the Bengals were not a tier 1 AFC team last year. By no means.
Or tier 2 going in.
Realistically speaking,
come on.
The Bengals were kind of where I have the Steelers this year, like tier 4, but maybe ascending depending upon quarterback play. And quickly, the Bengals went from 4 to 3 to 2, and realistically, they were a tier 2 team that found their way in the playoffs because of how well they played in the playoffs, thanks to their defense, as Marcellus will say, and Joe Burrow, as I will say. Browns are Super Bowl contenders because the AFC is truly wide open. The Chiefs have now descended to the rest of the pack, and Deshaun Watson is looking at Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Who is going to be better?
Wide open, that's what you call it? Whew, I need to go home with you. I'm talking about where I'm from. Because it's funny, like people go through the alley all the time and they call that a shortcut. A little deceptive, huh? Wide open, that's deceptive. The AFC is wide open. It's hard as hell to get through here, even if you are qualified. I didn't hear Pittsburgh, or I didn't see Pittsburgh. I heard you talk about Pittsburgh. That's another team. When the last time Mike Tomlin had a losing season?
Never, sir.
Never. Nunca. So guess what? That's another team we need to add just by default because they're going to have a winning record. Man, it's too gangster out here. Let's talk about it. Track and field early. You went to Texas.
Yes, sir.
I remember one time, first of all, I was fascinated with the University of Texas. Seriously, growing up until about 9th grade, I really wanted to go to UT. Realized that these skills didn't add up to UT. So I was like, all right, in love with the burnt orange. I ain't gonna lie, real talk. I'm a Dallas Cowboy, you fast forward, and everybody's going down to Texas Relay.
It was this past weekend.
See, the world loves me, and I love the world. Yeah, man, I'll go down there. Everybody pumped. You know, they talking about 6th Street, what her name is, where they at. I'm like, nah, I'm going to the relays.
Sir.
I'm watching. And you know what I used to witness? And I've known this forever, but it was just good to see. That the University of Texas B team was still tilting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go in the AFC. You're going to be a B team. That means you're not on the A team. You're not the first ones. You're not going to win the gold and still be amazing. And it's no slight to you. I know you don't walk around campus proud being the 5th fastest on campus because you're on the B team. But you know what? That's where you are. If you look at this list of teams and players at the quarterback position, don't feel bad, Deshaun Watson. You on the B team, bruh. I think number 8 in the AFC could be number 3, number 4 in the NFC. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not shooting at Deshaun. Deshaun gonna make it work. Cleveland and the culture, I'm not a big believer in the culture. That's not about people and the walls and the oxygen and the history. It's about you got enough good players right now playing well. I think all of that's going to work. But then you're going to add it up. They got to go through murderer's row in their division. They got to go through murderer's row in their conference. I think this looks like a team, even if they make it in, they're not Super Bowl contenders.
But here's the thing, Sel. In the league, which so many people don't know, but I'm going to let y'all in on a secret, it really just comes down to one question. Are you good enough?
Yeah.
You good enough to win it all. I tell this story often. I got condemned for telling it once on air. I'm just a truth teller. I keep it real. 2013 Philadelphia Eagles, we are 10-6. We go to the playoffs. I'm on practice squad. I had just been demoted from the active roster to the practice squad roster week 16 after playing the Vikings. If you're on practice squad, you can be a little more real with yourself. You don't have as much invested, and you're not getting invested in as much. We were playing the New Orleans Saints. First round of the playoffs. Saints were coming to us. We hosted the game. We could have beat the Saints, no question about it. They had Drew Brees, but Drew Brees, as we all knew, he wasn't great outdoors. It was in Philly. It was going to be cold. I knew we could get the Saints.
Yeah.
But here's what I knew. Even had we beat the Saints, we weren't good enough to win a Super Bowl. Because I knew in the NFC, there were teams like the Seattle Seahawks walking around with Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Brandon Browner, all in their prime. Marshawn Lynch in his prime. So here's what I knew. We weren't good enough. We were good enough to make the playoffs, but I, who could be a truth teller to myself as a practice squad player, I could take a step back. I wasn't DeMeco Ryans, the starting middle linebacker. I wasn't Nick Foles, the starting quarterback. I wasn't LaShawn McCoy. Those players had to lie to themselves to be like, yo, we can do this. I could be a truth teller. I looked in the mirror at night after watching a game tape. I'm a scout team player, so I had to know more about the opponent than even the starters did because I had to be the best duplicate of them. I was like, you know what? We're not good enough to beat these Seahawks. Now, true story, we lose to the Saints. It was frigid degrees. We lost to the Saints, bad special teams play. Going back into the locker room, I got my little ski mask on again. I was on the sideline holding a clipboard, shivering, writing down all of the plays. I knew we weren't good enough. Going back, we're dapping everybody up. I'm so relieved the season is over. It's like my second year out of college. It's freeze. I'm so relieved the season is over. I mean, I'm thankful. Next week, the Saints, I believe, go on to play the Seahawks. And the Saints got smacked. Seahawks go on to not only go to the Super Bowl, but win the Super Bowl and smack the Denver Broncos. That Seahawks team ends up being the greatest defense of the decade. Because I knew they were good enough and we weren't good enough. In the NFL, it just comes down to, are you good enough? I tell that story for this reason. The Browns are good enough. Now, yeah, the Chiefs still out there. Yeah, the Bills out there, the Bengals out there, the Ravens out there. But at the end of the day, I don't look at the Cleveland Browns roster and say they can't win a Super Bowl. I look at their roster and say, there's some dogs out there, and you're going to have to go get it. But I don't look at them like I looked at my Eagles team. I knew we couldn't win a Super Bowl. Now, the next year, I was like, yo, if we sneak into the playoffs, we got a shot. But that year, I was like, oh, we're not good enough. Because there are teams like the Seahawks out here with the greatest defense in the history of the decade. So for me, Sel, the only reason I disagree, and I fully agree that it's murderous row out there in the AFC, but the Browns are actually good enough. Because who do you look at and say they will beat the Browns regardless? I don't look at anybody and say that.
Well, we look at the Browns differently, so I can understand that. You really think higher of Amari Cooper than I do.
Fair.
But, hey, we'll see how he responds. But
that's true.
If I put a double on Amari Cooper and I look at this receiving core and I say, Deshaun, you in a new system and you haven't played in a year plus, go get it. We'll see how long that takes for him to gain traction, but I don't want to be up here slighting Deshaun. He's a beast, and I think it's going to work well, just not Super Bowl contending level. I see why you got condemned for telling that story. Oh, my God. Wasn't mind over matter, you think? A little bit of that? Like, mentally, you may have been tapping into what everyone else as a collective mentally was thinking. If you put that mental limit on you physically, you know you're shortened.
So when I was a starter, I never had those conversations. Even when I would one-on-one in practice, LaShawn McCoy, I would tell myself every day I could cover him. I know I got physical limitations, but I'm not going to believe that. I'm going to go tell myself I can cover him and I can cover him. But you know, when you said this, and this is what coaches lie about until the offseason when you ask them in reality. And I've asked, quick aside. I asked Chris Peterson, coach at Boise State and coach at Washington. Chris Peterson had to play Alabama in the playoffs. I think it was 2015. I asked him straight up, like, hey, did you think you could beat those guys? And he was like, yeah, I knew we could beat them. Now, we had to get a couple breaks, special teams touchdown here, maybe a big play here, maybe a great play there. But even a coach will be real if you know they got some dudes better than us. They know they got a couple breaks. You know in the league, so it comes down to, do you have the guys? Do you have the guys?
They do.
In my history, the Seahawks had Earl Thomas, Guy, Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman. The Browns got the guys. As soon as I rolled out there with Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, you got the guys.
Got the guys.
Now you just got to piece it together, but they got the dudes.
It's just not the formula for success, though. Oh, our running game is going who gives a damn? Like, it sounds great. Amari Cooper about the rebound. Okay, we'll see it. Deshaun Watson, beast. Okay, Myles Garrett, beast. Okay, you got Ward, beast. I see all that. Whether you're right or whether you're wrong, you're right. That's an old saying. I don't know about this team where they are mentally, but right now you got to be inspired. You got Deshaun Watson on your roster. Things are looking up. I just don't know how high you can look.